Margaret Whitmore had always believed that love meant giving more than you kept. For nearly 4 decades, she woke before sunrise, tied her hair into a neat bun, and reported for 12-hour shifts at the local hospital. Her hands, once soft and slender, grew lined and strong from lifting patients and holding strangers through their final breaths. Every ache in her back, every sleepless night, she accepted gladly because at the end of each day, she came home to Daniel. He had been only 7 when his father passed away. Margaret still remembered the way Daniel clung to her black dress at the funeral, his small fingers twisting the fabric as though letting go meant falling into darkness. From that day forward, she promised herself he would never feel that kind of loss again. She became mother and father, comfort and discipline, warmth and stability. She packed his lunches with handwritten notes tucked between sandwiches. She attended every school play, even when exhaustion made her vision blur. When he wanted piano lessons, she worked overtime. When he dreamed of college out of state, she refinanced the house without hesitation. The old blue colonial on Maple Street was more than a structure. It was her sacrifice made visible. Every mortgage payment was proof of devotion. When Daniel graduated and secured a corporate job, Margaret believed her years of sacrifice had bloomed into something beautiful. He bought her a smartwatch to monitor her heart rate. He insisted on paying for dinners. He began using phrases like investment portfolio and long-term security. She didn't understand most of it, but she smiled proudly anyway. The change came quietly. First, the phone calls grew shorter. Then, the visits became, "I'm busy this week, Mom." When he did come by, he walked through the house as if assessing it. He commented on the outdated kitchen cabinets, the small backyard, the wasted market value. "It's just a house," he said once, scrolling through listings on his phone. "You could be somewhere easier, somewhere safer." Margaret looked around the living room where pencil marks still faintly lined the wall, from Daniel's childhood height measurements. Just a house. One evening, Daniel arrived with a leather folder tucked under his arm. He was unusually cheerful, almost rehearsed in his tone. "Mom, I've found the perfect solution," he said, spreading papers across the dining table. "Rosewood Haven. It's a premium nursing facility. Full-time care, social activities, medical supervision. You'll love it." She blinked. "A nursing home? It's not like that," he insisted quickly. "It's modern, comfortable, and honestly, this place is too much for you now. Think about the stairs, the maintenance, the risk." Her heart beat steadily, though something inside her felt unsteady. "I managed just fine." He avoided her eyes then. "It's also a smart financial move. The housing market is high. If we sell now, we can reinvest, secure everything." Margaret noticed the word but said nothing. Had added his name to the deed years earlier when refinancing for his tuition. She remembered how proud she felt signing the document, believing it symbolized trust and unity. Now those signatures stared back at her from new pages. The next morning, they sat in a small office across from a notary. Daniel explained everything smoothly, confidently. Margaret listened to words like transfer of ownership and assisted living arrangement, as though they belonged to someone else's life. "Do you understand what you're signing?" the notary asked gently. Margaret looked at her son. He smiled reassuringly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yes," she answered softly. Her hand did not tremble as she signed. If Daniel noticed her calmness, he mistook it for trust. Within days, boxes filled her bedroom. Within a week, her furniture was staged for photographs. Strangers walked through the hallways where Daniel had once learned to ride a toy bicycle. On moving day, Daniel hugged her briefly. "This is for the best," he said. Margaret rested her palm against the front door one last time before stepping into the car. The house stood quiet behind her, sunlight glinting against its blue paint. She did not cry. Daniel believed her silence meant surrender. He did not realize that silence can also mean patience. Rosewood Haven smelled faintly of lavender and antiseptic, a careful balance between comfort and control. Margaret noticed it the moment she stepped inside. The floors gleamed. The walls were painted in warm tones meant to imitate home. Framed prints of gardens and sunsets lined the corridors, as though beauty could soften the word facility. Daniel handled the paperwork at the front desk with efficient confidence. He spoke about dietary preferences and medical history as if he were finalizing a hotel reservation. Margaret stood beside him quietly, her purse folded neatly in both hands. "You'll be safer here," he assured her again. "No more worrying about stairs." She nodded. Her room was smaller than her old bedroom, but tidy. A single window overlooked a courtyard with a stone fountain. The staff helped unpack her clothes. Daniel checked his watch twice. "I have to run, Mom. Big week ahead," he said, kissing her cheek quickly. "I'll come Sunday." She smiled. "Of course." He left before she reached the elevator to watch him go. That evening, Margaret sat by the window and let the quiet settle around her. She felt the weight of change, but not the sting Daniel might have expected. Instead, there was a strange steadiness in her chest, an awareness that events were unfolding exactly as she had once prepared for. 2 years earlier, after a minor fall in her kitchen, she had spent one night in the hospital for observation. The fall wasn't serious, but it had frightened Daniel more than it frightened her. He had talked incessantly about liability and long-term care planning. Something in his tone, practical, detached, had lingered in her thoughts long after she returned home. A week later, Margaret scheduled an appointment with a lawyer. She didn't tell Daniel. The lawyer, a soft-spoken woman in her 50s, listened carefully as Margaret explained her concerns. "I trust my son," Margaret said at the time, "but I also know how pressure changes people." Together, they established a living trust. The house would remain Margaret's primary residence for the rest of her life. If she ever chose independently to sell it, the proceeds would go to her. But if the property were sold under conditions where she was relocated due to persuasion, dependency, or external pressure for someone else's financial benefit, the funds would be redirected automatically to a charitable foundation in her name, the Whitmore Family Scholarship Foundation. Its purpose was simple: to provide educational grants to single parents pursuing healthcare careers. Margaret signed those papers with clarity and calm, not out of suspicion, out of experience. During her decades as a nurse, she had seen elderly patients abandoned, manipulated, or convinced that sacrifice was duty. Love, she knew, should never be confused with surrender. Back at Rosewood Haven, Margaret began adjusting to her new rhythm. She joined morning stretching classes. She spent afternoons reading novels she never had time for during her working years. She befriended Eleanor, a retired teacher with sharp humor and kind eyes. Most importantly, she met Sophia, a young caregiver working night shifts while studying for nursing school. Sophia reminded Margaret of herself decadasago, tired but determined, stretched thin yet hopeful. "You're very calm about being here," Sophia observed one evening while helping her arrange family photos on the dresser. Margaret smiled faintly. "I've had time to think." Meanwhile, Daniel's life accelerated through occasional social media glimpses shown to her by Eleanor. Margaret saw photos of champagne glasses clinking, a downtown condo balcony view, a caption that read, "New beginnings, smart moves." He looked triumphant. The house sold quickly. The market had been strong, just as he predicted. Friends congratulated him in the comments. He responded with confident emojis and words like, "Investment strategy and timing is everything." Margaret never asked about the money. She knew the sale would not be finalized until Daniel collected the final documentation and authorization from the notary's office. She understood timelines, legal processes, activation clauses. Patience had been her companion for most of her life. At night, as she listened to the soft hum of the hallway lights outside her room, she did not feel anger. She felt something steadier than that. She felt certain. Daniel believed he had secured his future. What he did not yet understand was that the foundation bearing their family name was already waiting for its first deposit. Daniel walked into the notary's office with the kind of confidence that comes from believing everything has gone exactly according to plan. He wore his best charcoal suit, the one he had bought after his promotion. His shoes were polished, his watch expensive but subtle. In his mind, this was the final step. Just a signature, a handshake, and the official release of the remaining funds from the house sale. After that, everything would align perfectly. The condo downtown would be fully secured. The dealership would finalize his car upgrade. His friends would raise another toast to his smart transition strategy. The receptionist smiled politely and asked him to take a seat. He checked his phone while he waited. Notifications buzzed constantly. Group chats planning a weekend getaway. A colleague confirming dinner reservations. A real estate agent congratulating him on a smooth transaction. Daniel allowed himself a satisfied grin. When the notary finally called him in, the room felt smaller than he remembered. The walls were lined with shelves of organized files, the air faintly scented with old paper and toner ink. The notary, a gay-haired man with careful eyes, shuffled through a folder thicker than Daniel expected. "Mr. Whitmore," he began evenly, "thank you for coming in. There appears to be a matter requiring clarification." Daniel sat down casually. "Sure. What do you need?" The notary adjusted his glasses. "Before the final disbursement of funds, we are required to review the trust provisions attached to the property." Daniel frowned slightly. "Trust provisions? The sale went through. My mother signed everything." "Yes," the notary replied calmly. "She did sign the transfer documents. However, the property was previously placed into a living trust established 2 years ago." Daniel blinked. "That's not possible. I'm on the deed." "You were added to the deed," the notary acknowledged. "But ownership within a trust structure operates differently. The trust contains a conditional clause regarding the sale of the primary residence under dependent relocation circumstances." The words felt legal, abstract, until they began to settle into meaning. "I don't understand," Daniel said, his confidence thinning. "The house was sold. The buyer transferred payment." "Yes," the notary said gently, "and according to the trust's activation clause. Because Mrs. Whitmore was relocated to assisted living under documented recommendation, initiated by a co-owner beneficiary, the proceeds cannot be distributed for private gain." Daniel stared at him. "The funds," the notary continued, sliding a document forward, "have been automatically redirected to the Whitmore Family Scholarship Foundation, as specified in the trust." Silence filled the room. Daniel's heartbeat thudded in his ears. "Redirected? What foundation?" "The charitable entity your mother established. It provides educational grants to single parents pursuing health care degrees." He let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "There must be some mistake. I already allocated that money. I signed contracts." "The contracts you signed were contingent upon receipt of final funds," the notary replied with steady professionalism. "As of this morning, The foundation account reflects full deposit of the sale amount. Daniel's stomach tightened. Images flashed through his mind. The condo balcony he had shown off on social media. The congratulatory messages. The deposit he had confidently placed on the car. He felt heat rising in his face. "You're saying I get nothing?" His voice was sharper now, edged with panic. "I'm saying," the notary answered carefully, "that your mother structured her estate to protect the asset from being liquidated for personal benefit under these circumstances. She signed within her legal rights." The word protect echoed in his head. Protect from whom? From him. Daniel leaned back slowly, the room suddenly too quiet, too bright. He thought about his mother's calm expression the day she signed the papers. The absence of argument, the lack of tears. She had known. While he celebrated with champagne and posted captions about strategy and timing, she had already ensured the outcome. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was the condo agent asking about confirmation of final payment. Another missive followed from the dealership finance office. Daniel didn't answer. For the first time in years, there was no smooth explanation, no confident solution ready on his tongue. There was only the uncomfortable realization that the woman he believed naive had quietly outhought him. He had assumed her silence meant weakness. He had mistaken patience for ignorance. And now, sitting across from the notary, Daniel felt something unfamiliar pressing heavily against his chest. Not anger, not even fear, but the dawning understanding that he had underestimated the very person who had taught him everything about survival. The automatic doors of Rosewood Haven slid open with a soft mechanical hum, and Daniel hesitated just inside the entrance. He had driven there without turning on the radio, without calling anyone, without rehearsing what he would say. The city felt different that afternoon, quieter somehow, though he knew it was only his own thoughts that had grown louder. 3 days had passed since the meeting at the notary's office. 3 days of frozen transactions, awkward calls, and the slow unraveling of the image he had carefully constructed. The condo deal had collapsed. The dealership politely informed him that without confirmed funds, the upgraded model would be released to another buyer. His friends had stopped sending celebratory messages and started asking cautious questions. He told no one the truth. Now he stood in the place he had once described as the best solution. The lobby was warm. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting soft rectangles across the tiled floor. A volunteer at the desk smiled kindly and pointed toward the courtyard garden. When he asked for his mother, Daniel's steps felt heavier as he walked down the hallway. He passed open doors where residents chatted, watched television, or sat quietly with folded hands. For the first time, he truly looked at them, not as responsibilities to be managed, but as people. He found Margaret seated on a wooden bench near the fountain. The winter air was crisp, but gentle, and she had a light shawl wrapped around her shoulders. A book rested closed in her lap. Her silver hair caught the sunlight, giving her a quiet glow. She looked peaceful. For a moment, Daniel simply stood there, unsure how to bridge the distance between them. She noticed him before he spoke. "Daniel," she said softly, as though she had been expecting him all along. He approached slowly and sat beside her. The fountain trickled steadily, filling the silence. "I went to the notary," he began, his voice lower than usual. "I imagined you would," she replied. He swallowed. "Why didn't you tell me about the trust?" Margaret studied his face carefully, not with accusation, but with recognition. "Would you have listened?" The question settled heavily between them. Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but no immediate defense came. He thought back to the months before she moved here, the way he interrupted her concerns, The way he framed everything is practicality, efficiency, optimization. I thought I was doing what made sense, he said finally. The market was high. The house was too much for you. The house was never too much for me, she answered gently. Loneliness would have been. He looked down at his hands. I added you to the deed because I trusted you, she continued. And I still do in a way. But trust does not mean removing safeguards. I worked my whole life for that home, not just for walls, but for what it represented. He exhaled slowly. You gave it all away. No, Margaret said softly. I redirected it. She told him about the foundation's first scholarship recipient, a young single mother accepted into nursing school. Tuition assistance had already been transferred, books purchased, a future quietly strengthened. I spent my life caring for strangers, Margaret said. If my home could help someone build a stable life for their child, then it still serves a purpose. Daniel felt a tightening in his chest. Not the sharp panic of financial loss, but something deeper. Shame mixed with clarity. I never meant to hurt you, he said, his voice unsteady now. I wanted more. I thought if I moved quickly, invested wisely, I could secure everything. And where did that leave us? She asked softly. He didn't answer. After a long pause, he spoke again. Do you hate me? Margaret's expression shifted, not to anger, but to something almost tender. You are my son, she said. I could never hate you, but I needed you to see that love is not an asset to be leveraged. A tear slipped down Daniel's cheek before he could stop it. He hadn't cried in years, not when his father died, not through the pressures of adulthood, but sitting beside his mother in that quiet garden. The weight of his choices felt undeniable. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted. Margaret reached for his hand, her grip steady despite the years etched into her skin. You begin by visiting, she said, not because you expect something, not because you need something, but because you want to be here. The fountain continued its gentle rhythm. For the first time since he had walked into the notary's office, Daniel felt something shift inside him. Not the loss of money, but the loss of illusion. He had believed success meant accumulation. His mother had just shown him it could also mean integrity. He squeezed her hand carefully as though relearning something fragile. I'll come back tomorrow, he said. Margaret smiled, and this time the silence between them felt different. Not like surrender, but like the beginning of understanding.